You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
It's playing. Everybody act normal.
That's me being normal. Hey, you know what? Dadgum, we got to start all over, huh?
Yeah.
For some reason, my laptop got disconnected from the Wi-Fi. Why? Hi.
If that happens again, we're going to have a talk with Spectrum.
Or Hasatan.
Or maybe they're one and the same. Actually, you know what? I've heard a lot of smack talk against Spectrum.
Yeah.
And they've always been good for us. So me and Kel both work from home for you. No problems. So it's not cheap, though. But, or not the package we pay for.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know what? It's just a miracle that we're here. Or is it? Because today is September the 25th.
Oh, no, we met. Where's everybody else?
So we're recording this in my basement alone because everybody else apparently got raptured. We got left behind, which is not a big surprise to me, but for you, maybe.
There's no time to change your mind. The sun has come and you've been left behind.
Right on.
You know what tape?
No.
Yeah. I didn't think so. You don't know hardly any tapes, huh?
No. I mean, I listened to a lot of cassette tapes in my day, but they were like Kiss and Van Halen, Little Def Leppard. But nothing like that.
Yeah.
My parents weren't nerds. Come on, we're not listening to stuff like that.
Mine was just listening to good old Christian music.
I'm kidding. Daryl and Neat, they are not nerds. Kind of, but
That's all right, though.
But yeah, so allegedly,
keep fogging up still.
Allegedly,
yeah,
the rapture was supposed to happen on the 23rd or 24th. I kept hearing mixed reviews about whether it was going to be 23rd or 24th, but allegedly, this guy, I believe the only thing I ever heard him called was Brother Joshua, which is kind of a cool name, if I'm being honest. But anyway, he allegedly had this vision that it was going to be something to do with the Feast of Trumpets in Israel, which was the September the 20th. I guess maybe it spanned 2 days, and that's why there was 2 different dates. I don't know. But then I kept seeing a lot of other people that were like, yeah, getting this vision, and it was confirmed for me, and all this. And yet, here we are once again on the 25th. So
I haven't heard any reports of people's clothing just kind of laying about in chairs or on the ground.
I saw a video that said
naked bodies floating in the sky.
I saw a video the other day that said, today's supposed to be the rapture, so everybody make sure to put clean drawers on, because when they're left behind and I see skid marks in them, I'm going to know who left them skid marks behind.
Yeah, that is really funny, huh?
I mean, it is funny. So this is one of those topics where it's funny, and I think it's funny. Like I think it's hilarious. But also, it does. I mean, in a way, it did make me start thinking through some stuff of like theologically,
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, not in a good or bad way, but just sort of like because it just seems like this keeps happening. Like everybody's like, "Oh, it's happening on this day," and then it comes and goes. And like we made light of it, but it's like if I had like one of those things you get from 7 Brew Coffee, where you buy 10 coffees, you get your 11th free. Well, I've been through 10 false raptures so far, so when do I get my free one? You know what I mean? Like at some point, you have to think like, when is it going to catch? Like when are you going to finally get the picture? But we just keep doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived through so many at this point.
We're not even 40 yet.
Yeah. It's,
But that's what, I'd messaged you the other day about the word soon, because that's part of that was part of my thought of it, was like, when are we going to at what point do you have to kind of reassess your belief and being like, yeah, I don't know, maybe things aren't starting to add up,
Yeah.
Or do you just double down on it? which seems to be the general consensus.
I don't know.
I don't either. And that was one of those little mind bugs. I guess that probably didn't even make it into the episode because we had to restart our computer. But
No, I was trying to think of what we have and haven't said
yeah,
so far.
because essentially what we had said before we just jumped right back in, because we had started recording, the computer updated, effed everything up. But we had said that this was a weird week for trying to pick out topics for us because first and foremost, it feels like we've only talked about politics lately, and this
Yes.
isn't necessarily a political show. We don't want it to be that, but like that's what's on our mind. That's what's happening in our world. It's fresh to us. And then sort of theologically, we haven't had as many kind of questions or as many things, and that's why I mentioned mind bugs, is because I told you today that I hadn't had any like topics that I've been studying so much as like little thoughts that I'd had that I'm not really like, they're not topics in and of themselves, and like so that was one of those little mind bugs. Is like the word soon is sort of, I don't know, but anyway, that and just some other things, but they're not really fully developed topics. They're just mind bugs.
Bugs. You know, they call lobsters bugs,
Yeah, they do.
supposedly.
Bugs.
I don't know. Bags.
I'm no marine biologist, but as I've been told,
I don't really know what to make of all the soon language or just any of the Rapture stuff, actually.
just get sort of frustrated with the language used because, like me and you have said before, is in reference to the word love, right? Like people will try to reinterpret the word love to fit their interpretation of certain scriptures that makes God not look loving. And me and you have said before, like these words have to mean something. If they don't mean something, then we can't even talk about them. Like if they lose their meaning, then they mean nothing. You know what I mean? And so like that's sort of the way I feel when people talk about soon into like the second coming or the rapture. It's like, I mean, I feel like that word at this point, that word has lost its meaning entirely. It's kind of pointless to even use it. What does it even mean? You know,
Right.
like that guy, we had a special guest speaker that came on Sunday, and he was talking about, he was reading out of Acts chapter 2 and was talking about Pentecost, and he had said, you know, we've been in the last days since the day of Pentecost, which like, I mean, I'm not, obviously I haven't read that in a while, but like based on the way he's reading that scripture, I don't know that it's wrong really. Like he's saying that because they quote the prophet, was it Joel?
Yeah.
And saying that in the last days, you know, the Spirit will be poured out and
On all flesh.
Yeah, on all flesh. So, and that happened on Pentecost, as is written in it says specifically in Acts, this day has this been fulfilled. So I guess technically since like, so we've been in the last days for 2,000 years, but then like that kind of loses its meaning. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. That just sort of frustrates. So that's what I mean whenever like I'm thinking like, well, at what point do we like look at our belief system and just be like, might have missed the ball there. Maybe something else is going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. You could, there's so many things that people could say about that. I was just kind of thinking through responses to that.
right. Well, and that's why I said they were just mind bugs and not like
Yeah.
a fully developed, like that's just a thought I had, but it's not something I'd studied or.
Right. You could use some Bible math and say, well, for the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, right?
Yeah, of course. I've heard that one my whole life.
So technically, we're only 2 days into these last days.
Right.
How many is last days? Maybe it's, you know what? It would be perfect if it was 7. 7 days, 7,000 years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've heard that whole argument my whole life. A day to the Lord's, but is this not for us to read? Like, if it's not for us, then you're telling me it's soon, but it's not in my conception of time. So then, what does that mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what point?
Right.
And then you're going to want me to interpret the rest of the Bible as though it's talking to me, but that part of it, just ignore that. But it means soon, but not soon to us, soon to God, which you can't comprehend and you don't understand, but we're just going to put it there anyway. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's not something that I have had a heck of a lot of time to think about lately.
Right. Well, and it's kind of funny that struck me the way it did because I don't even believe in it in the first place. not because of the soon thing. Like that's just another thing to add to the fire. But
Right.
like I don't believe it in the first place. So it's not like that's a make or break for me of like, oh, how am I going to work this out? It doesn't change anything for me, but it does make it. It's sort of like another nail in that sort of coffin for me.
Yeah. So I don't believe in a rapture. I do believe in a second coming. I don't know what that looks like. Couldn't describe it to you. But I guess just
Is it a second coming or was it a second coming?
I think there is still a coming. Just like, in the creeds, it says um he will come again to judge the living and the dead.
Right.
We look forward to the life of the age to come, so like I don't believe in a rapture, but I do believe in some sort of like something that's to come, and whatever that is, it will be something that we ought to look forward to. Life in the age to come. It will be the judgment, which is judgments are always for our good, for setting all things right. So that's what, like, just kind of digging into like trying to use the creed as a like the Nicene Creed or as a sort of framework for what to think about it. That's about all I have to say about it, I guess.
Right. I'm not creedal, so I don't care about the creed. And just, yeah, I mean, I don't this is something I struggle with, not whether I believe in it or don't. Like I have what I believe and I believe it and I'm pretty firm in it actually. This is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. But what I waver back and forth on is whether it matters to me what other people believe on it, but only because I see it, the toxic side of it so clearly. The whole like nothing here matters. We're gonna get out of here. We were just in like from my belief, like no, Jesus isn't coming back to take us out of here. Like the only way we break out of this cycle of violence and pain and suffering and death is to walk the path that He laid. He paved the path, and now we have to walk it, or nothing happens. We only continue to spiral through down this road of suffering and pain and heartache and death, and I see the toxic side of just waiting for Jesus to come back and fix it as nothing ever gets done. Like we've made the whole religion into just believing the right things, and now we're not even walking in the path that He laid out, so we're not anywhere closer to getting out of, you know what I mean? So like in that regard, like I kind of don't care what people believe, and then another way I kind of am just like, can we just stop and like freaking walk the way? Can we can we focus on that instead of just waiting for Jesus to come back and fix everything? He's already come and we rejected Him then. Like
Yeah. See, so I try to hold both of those things at the same time.
right.
I think if you're going to be consistent, if you're someone who is going to hold to a second coming and be consistent, I think you kind of have to hold both of those things together. You have to believe that the Great Commission, quote unquote, is something that, like, Jesus wouldn't have told the disciples to go and preach the gospel and make disciples of all nations if He wouldn't have told us how to live our lives if it didn't matter,
Right.
What we did here and now and like how it affected everyone else around us. Like, obviously, we're supposed to live the teachings of Jesus. We're supposed to follow Him, follow the way, the path, and that, to me, that doesn't change just because I believe that He's going to come back and right everything, make everything right that isn't right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know that I've known, me and you've talked about this before, so I know that you kind of always held that, why can't it be both? And like, I guess it can. I mean, there's people that walk the way better than I do that I guess have held both, you know what I mean? So, but it doesn't work for me. Like, to me, what that whole framework just sort of paints it into, like, anything that we do is nice. It's just good. But like, what actually fulfills it is Jesus coming back. So it's just like, but that sort of takes the urgency and the imperativeness of walking the way out of it. For me, that's just, I mean, like I said, you've worked it out for yourself and countless of other people who are better followers of Jesus than I am have done it too. So that's just why it doesn't work so well for me. But
I do think that I've changed my position a little bit on. I didn't even realize that until today. And when you asked me that, I actually kind of thought about it for a little bit, and I was, I think maybe I have changed my mind a little bit on. So, like, for a while, I found the post-millennial view pretty attractive. It's a more hopeful view than a premillennial rapture,
right.
However, given the current status of the world and America and how I've been feeling about it this week, I'm not convinced. I'm more in the camp, I guess, at least right now, because the postmillennial view essentially would mean that we establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, and then Christ comes back. He's not coming back until we have established the kingdom here on earth.
Right.
And that's a very hopeful view, but I don't see it happening right now. So,
Which if I believed in another coming, that's what I would be.
right.
But
And it is definitely a more hopeful view than the premillennial rapture, dispensationalism, all that stuff. And I think amillennialism is a better view also than that. However, I do see how that postmillennial view is easily picked up by Christian nationalists.
yeah.
That if you believe that Jesus isn't coming back until we establish heaven on earth, and you think heaven on earth looks a particular way,
Right.
looks like Handmaid's Tale or whatever,
Right.
if that's your view of heaven on earth, then of course, yeah, I think that that makes sense that you would want the Seven Mountain Mandate and all that stuff. You wanting Christians, in a particular brand of Christians, in all of these spheres of influence, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If that's your view.
Absolutely. It's the only way it makes sense, actually.
You're right, yeah. But I think that for me, just where I'm at right now, like I said before, I believe that Jesus is coming back. When it happens, what the earth, the status of us and our lives here looks like at that point in time, I have no idea. If I'm being honest, I'm not very hopeful right now. So,
Well, at least that's two of us then, not one. It's feeling not so hopeful. I mean,
I am, but I'm not.
it really is for me. Just the when you ask me,
Yeah.
I shared something on my Facebook the other day with, not to the public, just my friends, and not because I know we talked in the last episode about like, well, what good does it do? Like, this was not something me trying to preach to anybody it was just me kind of being like, this is how I feel in this moment. You know what I mean? Sort of a cathartic kind of thing. But it was, basically I said that every day I lose more and more hope that I used to maybe a little colorful language, but every day I lose a little more and more hope that we're ever going to make it past the crap that we're into right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that is how I've spent a lot of the last couple weeks feeling, It seems like every day there's just more coming out. It just makes me realize, like, no, we're in deeper doo-doo than I realized.
Yeah.
And it's just every day it's more and more. It's like we're in quicksand. That's what it feels like,
Yeah. Yeah. I've had moments where I was feeling pretty helpless, pretty hopeless this week. Especially, again, I don't know what I want to say and what I don't, but here's what I do want to say. The whataboutisms have got to stop. That's something that has really bugged me. And both sides are guilty of this. But it's like, my God, man, can we not just accept that we've done, said, supported horrendous things and own it and learn from it?
Right.
Before we immediately jump to trying to compare ourselves to someone else to say, well, we're not as bad as them. Well, what about them? And what about that? And what about this situation? And what about this person? Screw that, man. Like,
Yeah, that's something that's frustrated me lately as well. I'm seeing a lot of it, to be honest, out of like just friends I know, people I know on Facebook and stuff like that.
it's just so frustrating. Like, because like we've said before, I think you've said it on here before, like, whenever you say but, anything you said before the but is negated by the but. I mean, that's not always the case, I don't think.
Right.
But
it's a pretty good rule of thumb, though.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to things like this, when it's like, because it just comes across as like you're not actually taking ownership of the thing,
right?
And you're just trying to make excuses.
Well, that, and it just sends us deeper down the hole, man. Like, I can give a specific example of one that like I'd seen lately, but it was with the Jimmy Kimmel stuff, right? Like Jimmy Kimmel got suspended, and then the left, made an uproar, which I agree with, about free speech, right? Like, especially after I watched the clip that he got in trouble for, I was like, oh no, this is, if this is what's getting people canceled off of cable TV, then we're in real bad shape. Like,
right.
But just the silencing of voices that you don't like, and that coupled with some of the other things that I had heard Trump say about silencing people that are criticizing him and stuff. Like, the free speech stuff has got to, once we lose that, we've lost it all. If we don't have free speech, we have nothing. And that seems to be something that the left and right can agree on. I mean, that's, we said it when we talked last week about Charlie Kirk. That was one of the, like, I don't know that much about Charlie Kirk, but one of the things I do know was that he was staunchly allegedly for free speech, you know?
Yeah.
But then I would see people like that I know comment on like articles that the news stations would put out or whatever, and being like, well, people weren't talking, the left didn't seem to mind about free speech when they kicked Trump off of Twitter. Or what about when Tucker Carlson got kicked off of his show or whatever? And it's like, I hear you, but does two wrongs make it right? Do we want to, can we not acknowledge that was wrong and move forward and say free speech is something that we cherish here? Or do we want to be like, well, we're just going to throw our free speech down the garbage because the Democrats did it, so to hell with free speech? Like, is that,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean as far as like these what about them? Like, if you're only trying to counter something, if you think that what they did was wrong, but you're going to do it anyway to get back at them, well, then now we're just 2 steps in the wrong instead of 1 step forward, 1 step back, and back where we started. You know what I mean?
Which is exactly why Jesus says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, turn the other cheek. Because it's not going to stop unless someone has the nuts to stop.
Right.
Like,
that's exactly right.
I mean, let's just call it, I've been frustrated today, so if I end up using more brash language than normal, sorry, it is what it is.
I like it.
Like, one of us has to quit being the coward.
Right.
And actually do what's right.
Yeah.
And what's right is what Jesus said to do, which is to turn the other freaking cheek, to love your enemy, not to pray for those who persecute you.
Not to one up.
Right. A real display of power and a real display of biblical manhood is a man stripped naked, beaten within an inch of his life, hung up on a tree, and saying, I forgive you anyway. That is biblical manhood.
Right. Not just that, but even before, I mean, God, you could take it so far, because even before he was stripped and beaten and hung on a cross, Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? And he said that my kingdom's not of this world. If I wanted to use force and power to take this, I could, but I'm not going to, because that's not my way. Like, it's not just a matter of surrender, but it's a surrender when you don't have to. Yeah. You have the power to. That's exactly true manhood and true alpha.
Right. That's what it means to be a lion.
Yeah.
Not to prey on the innocent. Not to rip your opponent or your enemy shred to shred. No, it's to literally be willing to lay your life down for them. That's what it looks like to be a real dude. That's what it looks like to be a real Christian.
Right.
And that's not what I'm seeing from either side right now.
No. And that's why I've felt more hopeless, because it just seems like we only delve deeper in that cycle, and it only compounds it because the name of Jesus is invoked so often in our politics in America. Because, it would still be bad if we were doing what we were doing. But it only makes me feel helpless because it's being done by invoking the name of Jesus.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Actually taking the Lord's name in vain?
Yeah, actually because then that tells me, like, it's not just that Jesus isn't considered, or that, the way of Jesus isn't considered, but it's that, I mean, in my opinion, quite frankly, we're following the opposite of Jesus, We're, in Jesus' name, we're following the way of the Antichrist, quite frankly, in a lot of different regards, It just makes me, to me, that part invokes even more hopelessness for me.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you can point to things going on, again, I think on both sides, and say, and then look at Jesus and see the blatant, obvious contradiction, and still somehow, but like not see it.
Right. I was waiting to see what would be said whenever, because, by now most people have probably seen Trump's speech at the Charlie Kirk thing. And when he said straight up that, he said that Charlie didn't hate his enemies, and that's one of the areas that I disagreed with Charlie, because I hate my enemies. I don't want the best for my enemies. And like that is literally like smacking Jesus across the mouth. That's saying I do not care about what Jesus said. And so I was just waiting to see, and much to my surprise, wink, not at all, I see nothing. Like, I didn't, it's like, just double down on it. Like,
yeah, I have a lot. A lot I would like to say about that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it on the recording. I'm just not going to. But after this, I want to tell you some stuff I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah. To me, that just that's what I mean about feeling hopelessness by invoking the name of Jesus, though, is it's like and it's probably, what this comes across, I'm sure if you're someone who's like is a lifetime on the right, it comes across different. For me, I acknowledge that I have a certain paradigm, that I have lived a certain life, and that I view the world through a certain lens, right? But for me, as someone who grew up on the left, my family was always Democrat, and that's the way I grew up to see the world, and that's the way I am today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been told my whole life that being a Christian and a Democrat is a contradiction. You can't be a progressive Christian is a contradiction that cannot exist. That the Republican Party is the party of family values. That's the pro-life party. It's being told all of those things through my whole life. Yeah. And then to see Trump say that on a stage where the name of Jesus was invoked how many times? Like, where I don't even remember his name. One of the real popular Christian singers sung songs and all this stuff. And then
Brandon Lake, I know, was one of them.
It just, the hypocrisy of it is so disgusting to me. That's why I am so, like, why I'm not one of those both side people. Like, I acknowledge the imperfections on both sides, but I am far more hard on the right because of what I just said, because of the blatant hypocrisy of it, right? Like, in my, from my perspective and from my paradigm, like I said, I acknowledge that I am biased in that regard because I can only see the world through my own eyes. You know what I mean? So,
well, as someone who has been a lifelong Republican until the last few years, I can say that I fully understand what you're saying, and that makes sense to me because as someone who, because that was my understanding also from the inside, from someone who was inside that world of, Republican equals Christian, I can tell you that is very much what was just assumed from my own experience. Yeah. It was just assumed that you couldn't be a Democrat, and a Christian. Like, Republicans are the Christian party. That was my own conception of it.
Right.
Growing up the way that I did. And that's why I always voted Republican. In my earlier years, I didn't even know why. I mean, I knew that, we stood against abortion,
Right.
and LGBTQ. I knew those major issues, and like but I didn't really do a lot of research into, like,
Right.
what does that mean? Like, what is the best way to prevent abortions? How should we think about these people that are marginalized, that are different than me, and how should they be treated? What kind of rights and freedoms and inclusion should we give to these people that are different than us? Like, those weren't things that I actually thought about at all back then,
No.
It was, so yeah, I just say all that. Maybe I shouldn't have said all that, but like, I just said all that to say that, like, from an insider's perspective, 100%, I think that if you're going to claim this party is the Christian party over and against the other party, then dadgummit, be Christian.
Right.
Let's actually be Christian then,
Right. And that's what I mean about the, like, because I am admittedly harder on the right than the left. Well, number one, just
too.
because I am on the left, but number two is because even though I am aligned left politically because of my belief in following the way of Jesus. Like, I believe that those values align more with the values of Jesus than those on the right. But that's not why I am harder on the right necessarily. Why I'm harder on the right is because it's not the people on the left that are using that sort of language as far as, like, we're the Christian party, and you, like, that was right-wing language. The way it's used now is really just because of some of these blatant hypocrisies that are being used to point back. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
That's not an acknowledgement. That's not saying that the left is perfect, or that everything on the left is Christ-like, and that Jesus was a Democrat, or if Jesus was to come back today, he would. No, I don't think that at all. You know what I mean? But, like, it was never sort of the mainstream left position to be like, we're the Christian party, and that's where my criticisms come in.
Yeah. And I mean, I said it a second ago, but, like, you said that that's why you criticize the right more. Well, the reason I criticize the right more is because it's what I know.
Right.
It's what I grew up with. It's what I've come out of. In a lot of ways, I don't know that I have any right to say anything about the left, because I don't know that world. I didn't come from that world. I wasn't a Democrat and then saw contradictions and saw things that were wrong, that caused me to rethink my alliance with the Democratic Party. It was the opposite perspective for me. It was the right.
It's the same reason why we talk about Christianity on here, like, all the time, and not these other religions, because we don't know those other religions.
Right, yeah.
Could we critique some of the theology of these other religions? Maybe. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know the religions.
Yeah. So I can only speak to my experience, and also, we are, like, Kentucky went to Trump in a landslide. It's never even close. It's always Republican. But aside from that, like, just, we live in a very small rural area of Kentucky, and everyone that is in our circle group of family and friends, basically, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, but, like, for me, is white evangelicals that voted for Trump.
I don't have any friends.
I mean, if I'm going to talk about these things, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to be talking about? It's going to have to be conservative and Christian.
I will say that this has made, so my relationship with church, as a whole, not specifically to our church, but just Christianity as a whole, organized Christianity, actually participating in the religion, is only like it was strained enough without politics, just because of my deconstruction theologically.
Yeah.
Or deconstructions theologically.
Plural.
That makes it difficult enough. But in today's world, with the political stuff and how intertwined it is with evangelical Christianity, it makes it, I mean, that's a constant battle of being involved in any sort of formal Christianity and even wanting to be associated with it because of its intertwinedness with the religious right, is...
Yeah.
Which is, in a way, is terrible, right? Like, we really are driving people out of, I don't want to say we, I guess, but people are being driven out of the churches because of its forays into politics. I think that we've mentioned it before, but, you've already mentioned them in this show, the Tim and April show.
Yeah.
But April, I think actually both Tim and April, but I'm more familiar with April's story. She admitted she's grew up lifelong Republican and was hardcore into the Christian nationalism stuff, but like she has like deconstructed all of that stuff because of the evangelical church's marriage to right-wing politics.
Yeah.
And that's a story that we hear over and over and over again, is that it's not the Jesus that's driving people out. It's the politics in the church's insistence on it, on being involved in it, that's driving people away. I mean, if you ask somebody like me, I don't know that anymore. I don't know that that's a bad thing. But if you're someone who's a big believer in the church, then I can see where that you could maybe you should take note of that.
Right. It's gotten to a point where, for a lot of people, there just is no longer a difference.
Well, that's did we talk about that in last week's episode?
I think we may have mentioned it. I don't remember what because we talked about stuff off air too. I don't know what made it in.
Right.
I don't remember.
Well, that's something that a huge takeaway I took away from the whole Charlie Kirk thing was like, people saying that he was murdered for his Christianity. And it was like, if that's what your belief is, I think that you need to look at your politics and your religion and see if there's a difference or if they're one and the same. Like, to me, that was when I started hearing people. I mean, I seen a video today where a Christian pastor was preaching that from the pulpit.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at it in a few days, I don't think, to see if we have any updates on the guy's motive. But what I have heard was that he had made comments about him viewing what Charlie Kirk was saying as hate.
Right. Hateful.
He was spreading hate. And so is that what Christians want to own as, like, he got killed for this thing?
Right.
Jesus said people would know that they're his disciples by our love. Now, of course, there is the argument to be made, and it's something that could be debated, I guess, as far as like, if you're loving someone, could they perceive that love as hate in some way? I don't know. I mean, that would be a pretty hard. I think that'd be a hard case to make, but that someone could bring that.
Well, I do think that that's the way it's. I mean, they wouldn't use the word hate, but I think that is what's meant by that. Like, if someone. Because if you're someone whose politics are founded on rejection of I'm going to use the word discrimination, even though I don't think they would, against like LGBTQ people, trans people. Trans people are they're the T in the LGBTQ, but people in the LGBTQ community. Charlie Kirk had a lot of comments that he made that were taken, whether they were or weren't, they were at the very least perceived as inflammatory towards, the people of color. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, if your association, like if what defines your Christian views is being a jerk to LGBTQ people, well, like, is that's your mark of like Christianity? That's standing up for your Christianity? Is to your point, like Jesus said, you should know, they shall know you're our disciples, or they shall know you are my disciples by your love for one another.
Right.
So like that's the defining mark of what makes a Christian, is if you discriminate against LGBTQ people, or
right.
or people of color or Muslims.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. It is something to think about. It's something that the church needs to wrestle with. This whole question of like just genuinely ask yourself, do people know that you're a Christian because of the way you love people, or just because you say you are? Or do they assume you are because they know you're a Republican? like, like what's the how would someone know? What's the fruit?
supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think that goes deep for me, though, because that's why I've been on this thing lately about how the Christian religion has morphed into all about belief. Just believe the right things, right? We've taken the fruit aspect out of it. As long as you say the right things, admit, believe, confess, right? Then you're in. You're part of our team. And like some of the recent happenings in the world and with all this political stuff has really brought that back to the forefront for me. Of it's not that your belief does, because your beliefs should, if it's a true belief, it should shape your action.
Yeah.
So it's not that your beliefs don't matter, but it was when we made it all about believing the right things and we just kind of put the fruit at the wayside of it. That's, to me, is where things get off track,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way that I know that there's evidence.
Right.
Anyway. What hasn't helped? And I don't know, this is probably actually for the better. It's probably a good thing. It never feels like a good thing in the moment. But with everything going on in the world, I've also been listening to things that have been only making things worse. But like worse in a way that like maybe it has to get worse before it can get better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. True growth comes through being uncomfortable, out of the comfort zone. So sometimes you've got to get out of that comfort zone. You need to feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. And I've definitely felt uncomfortable. Because I had listened, I think I mentioned it last time we recorded that I had started listening to The Color of Compromise by
Yep.
Jamar Tisby. I finished that. And I started Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Dumais. And both of those are showing, from a historical perspective, they're bringing critiques of the American evangelical church,
Right.
and one is talking about the complicity with the racism, and the other is really tracking this idea of biblical manhood and the rise of the religious right and a lot of that. That's why there's that comparison, Jesus and John Wayne, and John Wayne is sort of this figure of what it means to be a real man,
It's a caricature of masculinity.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like both of those, and I haven't I've gotten a pretty good ways into. I ran out of listening hours on Spotify, so I wasn't able to finish.
It's the 25th. You've almost made it to the end of the month.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, that listening to those books hasn't really helped me feel a lot better about the current situation.
Right.
But like I said, I do think that it's needful actually to educate yourself on these things.
Yeah.
To learn from your past so you can know how to move forward.
Right. Yeah, all this stuff has kind of happened at a unique time for me because I was already really in a weird spot with just kind of in the midst of a theological sort of deconstruction or, not sure where I stood on a lot of things. And so I was already feeling sort of weird about everything. And then all of this stuff since the Charlie Kirk assassination happened, it's just kind of inflamed everything to the point of like, ew, brother, ew. Like I just,
That video is so
but
funny.
it just hit me at a weird time to where I didn't need any more help being pushed out the door, to be honest. Like,
Right.
and this just has really been like a kick in the rear end, and I got a lot of rear end, so it's a big target to kick. So
Kista?
yeah, kick me right in the keister. It's like I was instead of like trying to pull me back in the door, they were like, please get out of our door. Good riddance. So
Go on, go away.
that's how it all sort of feels when I see some of the stuff people are saying.
Read some books. Yeah.
It's very good. So, but I haven't had a lot of time to think through a whole lot of theological stuff, with all of everything else. So I kind of questioned whether I even wanted to talk about this, and I still don't know how I want to say it or how it's going to come out, but I'm going to say it anyway because that's what I do.
Okay. Go.
But one of the unique things about this whole situation, and what I was just kind of building on what I had just said, was that what I had discovered is that I have sort of over the last few years come full circle. Where I had many years ago, when we maybe at some point we should retell our deconstruction stories since it's been so long and we've,
Right.
But many years ago, I deconstructed my Christianity. Where that had left me was in an almost a sort of, depending on the day, I would have told you I didn't believe in God at all. Sometimes I still did, but not in like the way that I traditionally had. I believed in some sort of higher power, or and that's when I really started to study some other religions, and that's where I started finding things that I drew from in Zen Buddhism and some of the Hindu teachings and even some of the Norse pagan Druidry and all the different stuff, but there became a time, so I guess let me backtrack that to where, like, when I first deconstructed, I deconstructed to, like, sort of a progressive Christianity, right? But I was still firmly Christian, and I wasn't studying those other religions. But I became so discontented with Christianity that's what it's sort of like I got tired of it. Like I'm done reading this stuff. You know what I mean? And that's what led me into studying those other paths. But I say all that just to say, depending on the day, I maybe would have told you I didn't believe in all, but I always sort of had a belief in a higher power, but I wasn't sure what it was. And I was starting to like some of these more traditional Christian, like creedal positions, which I didn't know the creeds back then, but now I know they were creedal positions.
Right.
Like I sort of like lost faith in those things. And then, so anyway, so I got to that area to where I just put down Christianity for a while. Like I wasn't reading my Bible, I wasn't studying, I wasn't praying, I wasn't doing any of that stuff, But then, things came back around and I don't even remember why now because it's been several years, but I came back around to picking it up again and reading it, started coming to Bible study and we started studying. And then, I started doing the Global Grace classes. And so it kind of started back that trajectory back up into Christianity again, right?
Right.
And I started learning about the incarnation and the Trinity and hypostatic union and the creeds and all this stuff. And it's sort of where I've kind of landed back with some of this stuff is kind of right where I started before, to where like I still believe in God and I still believe in higher power. You know what I mean? Higher power. That's how you look at redneck. But the point being is that when I was at my low, when I deconstructed, what I held on to was the way of Jesus. I didn't know what I believed about God, but it was about the way of Jesus. That was what I clung to. And I tried again to make all the theological stuff work for me, and I've had a really hard time with that. But where I've came back to is the emphasis on the way of Jesus. Right. It's about the path of Jesus. It's about following this teacher, this rabbi, Jesus. The way that he set forth. And that's where I started from. And in a weird way, now I finally got to the part where I was like, I'm not sure what I want to say about this. But in a weird way, what has brought me back to the emphasis on the way of Jesus is what happened with Charlie Kirk. Like, it's a weird, not to glorify what happened to him, because what happened to him
Right.
was terrible. What I mean to say is that I don't view when Charlie Kirk was alive, I didn't ascribe to his kind of Christianity.
Right.
I would not have looked at him as someone who's going to lead me back to a Christian faith of any kind. Right. If anything, he was driving me, and the kind of rhetoric that he would espouse would drive me away from Christianity. And yet, through him, it has kind of brought me back to that place of centering on the way of Jesus, the emphasis on the way of Jesus, which
Yeah.
is the one thing that has always felt right to me. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, what I'm trying to say is it's the people and the places that you least expect it
Mm-hmm.
or can be used, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've been thinking about lately, about how unique that is that's, if you were to tell me that like Charlie Kirk is going to lead you back to a closer relationship with Jesus, I'd be like, come on, dude, get the freak out of here. And in a way he didn't, but it was through, you know, that path,
That
that
whole
kind of,
situation.
the whole situation that sort of brought me to realize the importance of this way of nonviolence,
Right.
which is to me the centerpiece of the Jesus way. It's enemy love and compassion on others, especially particularly the least of these, and then nonviolence. Like those are the and that's not the whole thing, but those, you know, those are some of the key tenets of the way of Jesus. And it's through what happened to Kirk and the fallout, you know, from that has kind of reignited that within me, you know,
Right.
the importance of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that was kind of winding because it was a lot going on there. But anyway, that all of that was just to kind of emphasize that, you know, that through that I have found a healthier, and when I say healthier, I'm not like in a spiritual crisis like I felt like I was there for a really long time. It kind of reminded me. That's why I sent you last week. I don't know if you remember, but I sent you that verse that was kind of standing out to me. It was from Revelation 2, and it was the like your first love, you know, that
Right.
I don't have it pulled up. I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's, you know, you've lost your first love. And it kind of reminded me of that. Like despite all of whatever with the theology of it, my first love was the way of Jesus. That was the thing that always resonated with me, was that path of Jesus. You know what I mean? And I lost that because I couldn't make the theology of it work. I was so focused on the theology of it that I lost what was actually important to me. Like I had lost that first love, lost sight of it. And through everything that's happened lately, I am in a healthier place with that part of it, at least. So,
Yeah.
I don't know what people will get out of that, but
Probably mixed reactions, maybe.
maybe, I don't know.
But
But yeah,
I hear you though.
so that's where I'm at, like that's part of why I don't have a lot going on theology wise, is because like that's not been my focus lately.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of theological stuff going on in my mind, really, other than like just kind of going through some of the history of, some of the, like I said, reading those books have obviously brought some stuff up,
Right.
but and not really like any real huge theological problems. Other than like, I guess anytime it feels like you're kind of slipping into despair, it raises those questions, I think, of, do you really believe this? At least it does for me. Like it, you say that you believe all this, that you have all this hope for the future, that everyone can be saved, and all those things. Like, do you really believe that?
Right.
Whenever all those kind of things happen, like you say you believe that Jesus, that it's done, it's finished, and he has overcome Satan's sin and death. The battle has been won. You say that. Do you really believe it? Those kind of questions do come up for me. And sometimes you just need to be reminded of that. I tell you what, my whole mood, everything shifted today whenever I was pretty down about it, about just the state of everything in the world right now and in our country and all that. And kept thinking, I was trying to think of like, maybe let's see if there's something I could listen to that might bring me back up, raise my spirits or whatever. And I couldn't think of anything. And then it was just kind of like, the obvious, like, hey, dummy, why don't you pray? But honestly, I found myself not knowing what to say, even like what to pray. I'm sure all of us have had those moments where it's like, I don't even have the words to say right now. So I went to my Common Prayer app on my phone and I just read through the midday prayer.
Shout out Shane Claiborne.
Yeah.
One of my faves.
And I just read through that midday prayer. And man, it changed everything for me today. It really did. It was exactly what I needed to hear. It was that reminder of the gospel. It was that reminder of where my hope lies.
Yeah.
Is what I needed to hear today. So that was good. It's good to know that, like, even when you can't, like, this is one reason why I love the tradition so much. And stuff like a lot of those prayers in there are, they're coming from the Book of Common Prayer. It's like, these are things that have been passed down in the tradition. Like, it's like, even when I can't find the words or anything within myself to pray, I have this long tradition of people feeling that same thing and praying anyway.
Right.
And I can pray those prayers with all of them. And that just really made me feel so much better today. Probably no one else cares about that.
Oh, I mean,
But-
it is a good, I think if someone is going through despair, it's a good reminder because, like you said, it's the most basic thing. But you didn't even think it. You're like, oh yeah, like people don't think about that stuff, but sometimes it is just as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah.
And shut out, just replace some of the stuff that we're putting in and pour a little out.
Yeah. If only I had someone that I could lament to about the situation, about the state of about all my woes,
Yeah.
So, yeah, dummy, just pray.
That is something that probably where I'm at personally makes it, now that I've kind of explained where I'm at, it probably does make it shed some light on the hopelessness that I feel, right? Because I put such an emphasis on that path of Jesus that, like, I don't think anything ever gets better unless we follow the path, and it seems like we're going the opposite direction. And so that does cause me to lose hope a bit, So, yeah. I mean, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. You can lose hope, or you can allow it to motivate you to. I'm just gonna love these people even harder. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just gonna,
Right.
I'm gonna double down on it, and I'm just, because I can't change the world, but like I can change me and be one shining example. And what the world does with that, the world does with that. They killed Jesus for it.
Yeah.
Maybe that, maybe it comes to that. I doubt it, but maybe it comes to that for me. So.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah. Another thing that kind of brightened my spirits a little bit was I saw that Jordan Daniel Wood was on Premiere Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Kind of having, I wouldn't call it a debate. Usually that's what they kind of do there, is have debates. It was it was more of a discussion between two people that disagree with each other. But
Jordan may have done debates in the past, but he doesn't come across to me as a very debate style person. Not because he couldn't do it. I mean, he's obviously a well-spoken, well-studied, intelligent person. It just doesn't seem like his modality of choice. You know what I mean?
right. I know he's done them in the past before. This one was between him and an annihilationist, or he may prefer the term. I don't remember actually if he said if he preferred the term conditional immortality or not. But basically, kind of the same thing.
Yeah. I will respect your preferred label, whatever you want.
Because I think that it may be one of those things where, like, one is the other, but the other one's not necessarily the other.
Yeah.
Does that even make sense? Like, it may be that, like, all conditional immortality folks are annihilationists, but not all annihilationists are conditional immortality.
Right.
It may be one of those things.
Yeah.
But either way, that was the two sides being presented. It was Jordan with, universalism, Christian universalism, and annihilation. It was, it was interesting.
I really had not ever heard of that, to be honest, but it's not surprising because I don't. It's not.
Heard of Premiere Unbelievable?
Yeah. But just because of my algorithm and the stuff I typically listen to, it's not surprising that I wouldn't have heard of it.
Guess what song they used for their intro?
I can only imagine. No.
No, I thought you would immediately get it. That's why I said it. You're unbelievable.
Oh, dun, 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 dun. Oh, I love that one. I haven't heard that one in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty well known in like evangelical circles.
Yet again, makes sense as to why I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know several people that have been on there. Pretty big name folks. N.T. Wright has like a normal, I think it's called Ask N.T. Wright Anything,
So original, NT. Come on.
where people write in questions and he responds to it. Justin Brierley is he's the guy that I associate most with Premiere Unbelievable. He doesn't do all the discussions like the one with Jordan Daniel Wood, and I think his name was Dan Peterson. Maybe it was the other guy. It wasn't Justin Brierley that did that one, but
You never did answer me when I asked you what you thought about that J.D. Lionheart pod that you sent me.
oh,
What were your takeaways from that?
I don't even remember what it was. Oh, yes, I do. He was talking about his book Monothreeism, right?
Yeah.
I mainly sent it to you because I thought it was an interesting. I don't actually know if I fully understand, or it may just be that I just don't agree. But I don't. I suspect it's more that I just don't understand. But I just thought it was an interesting position to take to say that, like, essentially, it's been a while since I listened to it, so hopefully I'm probably going to butcher it, but hopefully it's.
If you're real interested, go look it up for yourself.
Hopefully it's somewhat recognizable
Yeah.
to what's actually the truth of it. But as I understand it, his essential thesis is that paradox is essentially at the heart of even our own existence. So to talk about things like the Trinity, and that's the main thing that he talks about, but I think it would apply to other things that seem to be paradoxical, the incarnation and very other, those a lot of actually basically all of the main tenets of Christianity are kind of paradox in my opinion. So but his whole position, I guess, is that unless you're going to just essentially reject that we even exist, that the universe itself exists, then like the fact that we exist is itself a paradox. And so if you accept that, then you really have no excuse not to accept the paradox of the Trinity or these other paradoxes. I think that's essentially what he's doing there.
I think that you're probably pretty close because that's kind of what I got from it too. So if that's what we both took away from it, that's either kind of what he meant or he did a terrible job of explaining it. Now, to be fair, I was listening to it while I was running, and I've talked on here before about how my mind wanders when I So yeah, I tried to follow, but at times my mind was wandering too. So
yeah,
but yeah,
so yeah, I mean, because I tend to lean into the paradox, I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fine way of thinking about it. But what I didn't fully grasp was the argument that existence itself, that the universe is a paradox.
Right. Well, that's kind of that's where things fell apart for me a little bit with it, was because my understanding, and again, this could be totally wrong, but my understanding was that it's not necessarily that existence itself is a paradox, but it's that if you're going to believe that our existence was caused by God,
yes,
then that is in itself a paradox, which I thought was ironic that certain people interpret that same data so differently, because what do you think that does to me? That doesn't make me lean into, well, then, oh yeah, all these other paradoxical things are right. That sends me more towards the atheism.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. None of this makes sense.
Yeah, I actually hesitated to send that to you for that very reason. I was like, I don't want to make him an atheist.
Yeah. No, it didn't. I mean, it didn't send me any further farther down the path than I already was, but it did, like, that was sort of my takeaway from his argument was like, I think I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't help me into believing the Trinity anymore. It just makes me, if anything, be like, yeah, none of this actually does make sense, does it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do understand what he's saying. But yeah, like I said, I'm definitely not someone who is opposed to paradox.
right.
I would embrace it.
I would get sort of curious to ask him, like, how does he hold on to anything?
Right.
Because it seems like that's sort of your whole premise is like, well, just our existence itself is paradox, and therefore you just should accept paradox. Well, then, like, which paradoxes? Why do you accept some and not the other ones? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it seems like you have no way of ascribing what's true and what's not. So you're just sort of, well, this is what I'm going to believe. And I know that's not what he's doing, but
Right. Yeah. It'd be a good question to ask him. I suppose we could reach out to him, see if he'd come on.
yeah, I probably should read his book though. Also,
Yeah, if we were gonna have him on, we probably should read his book first. Although I have, have you listened to him on? He's been on David Artman's podcast a couple times recently. Grace Saves All podcast. He's been on there a couple times, and he was talking to you remember Paul Goff, right?
name sounds familiar.
He's been on Rethinking God several times. Anyway,
I'm sure I've listened to him then.
Yeah, that he had both of them. So like JD came on Grace Saves All, and then Paul Goff came on and talked with David about JD and the podcast that they did, and then David had both of them on together, and they kind of did a debate of sorts because JD is sort of like a hopeful universalist, I think is what he would label himself as. And so, of course, the subtitle to Grace Saves All is the necessity of Christian universalism. So for David, it's not a hopeful thing; it is a necessity. He's very confident in it.
It's one of those non-negotiables for him.
Right. And so they had a little bit of a debate, and it was about free will, which is another thing that JD views as a paradox, right? Was free will.
Yeah.
So that would be something interesting to talk to him about too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That was a good. I mean, I'm glad that you sent it to me because, like I said, I hadn't been thinking about a whole lot of theological stuff. So that was at least a little bit of a theological distraction from me to, like, listen to it while I was running that morning. So
it sounds like it would be an interesting read because it's not the way it sounds. It's not like a super like academic book. I mean, it is pretty. It's academic, but it's written in like a narrative form.
Yeah.
Sounds almost like
I'm never going to be able to read anything anyway because I'm never going to finish this Chris Green book.
How far into it are you?
Chris Green, let me give you one thing. Quit being so wordy, all right? I'm never going to get through the book. I'm 3/4 of the way through it. I don't know. I don't remember exactly where I left off at, but
yeah.
I mean, I've read some this week. It's not that I'm not reading. I don't have as much time to read as I would like, but
you said you're how far into it?
Probably like 3/4 of the way.
Anything sticking out as like super great?
I mean, I've talked about a lot of the good stuff in it, that I had got, but this most recent section that I went through, nothing stood out to me as like real good.
Interesting. Because as I've said on here before, I've read a few of his books, and at least a couple of them that I read, I know I ended up almost highlighting the entire thing because I just love it. So,
well, I mean, me and you are a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, I've got a lot of highlighter in there too. It's just this most recent section so far. There wasn't as much. I mean, the prior sections, there was a lot of good stuff. I've talked about several different things on the show, but
so like, I guess what I'm really curious about is I was curious about how much he actually, and it may be that what I'm actually looking for is going to be in the Dogmatics, the third book in the series that hasn't come out yet. I think it's coming out pretty soon though. But it's a series on Christology specifically, so I
Yes.
was curious to see, like, I don't think that, and this wouldn't be his style anyway, but it's not as if when it says a biblical Christology, it's not as if he's like going through and telling you directly this is who Jesus is, and like this is what the scripture says.
Right. No, there's none of that in this book, so far at least.
Right.
Most of what he's done in this book so far is been, so he kind of started at Genesis and has worked his way through, like this actually, I said there wasn't that much stuff that I took away from that, but that was actually a bold-faced lie, now that I'm recalling what I read, because he talked about Micah, and it could have been literally written yesterday for the state of the United States of America, in my opinion, but so all of that was really good. But he started at Genesis and sort of went through and, talked about like Joseph, did a whole lot of exegeting in the Joseph narrative, talked about Abraham and Abraham and Sarah. Now he did some of the prophets, so he's doing Micah. So he's kind of going through, but he's not going through and like, there's Jesus in the story. He's sort of more showing a more Christ-like way to read some of those stories. I don't know if that makes sense because I just said he's not going through pointing out Jesus, and he doesn't, but a holistically a more Christ-like way to read it, right? So how do you deal with some of those passages that don't look like, how do you find Christ, or what's a Christ-like way to read some of those passages where it's really hard to look at it and be like, I see Christ in there. Yeah, that's easy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he's done some of that, which I thought was good. There was it was kind of classic Chris Green, where he has a way of reading the stories like David. He talked a lot about the David story too, about how we sort of whitewash over David and want to paint him as perfect and good, and kind of show that that's not necessarily the Christ-like way to read the story, right? Because Christ is always on the side of the poor and the estranged and the outcast. And sometimes that is David, but sometimes David is the one doing the outcasting, right? I mean, in the story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah, David was not the Christ character in that story. Right. You know what I mean? So he does I think a good job of doing that, or he did the same thing with Joseph, where like we tend to look at Joseph as he's a one-for-one for Jesus, and like kind of goes through there and shows, nah, in all these stories, Joseph isn't the good guy. He's not the Jesus figure, Right. So I think that was good. That's been my main takeaway so far from it.
Yeah. So because Christology has been such a big topic for both of us, and something that we've disagreed on a ton, it's actually, you could argue it's the source of all of our disagreements.
Probably.
Yeah. I was just curious if how the book was coming across to you. And again, it may be that like he'll more directly address the questions that we would have about Christology in the Dogmatics that's coming up, but I don't know.
And some of the way I've noticed this through reading some of these books is that it really is it's been a theme for me over the last year. It's all about paradigm, right? Like the lens that you approach it with, because there's been things in this particular book that Chris Green wrote that I got from it that there's no way he wanted me to get that from it. But I seen it that way because of the way I was approaching it. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, as far as like Christology specifically, I don't think we've got there yet in this book.
Yeah.
It's been more about exegeting Old Testament.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I didn't really, I guess, expect it to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
not if he's going to write a third book. You got to leave something for the third.
Right. But yeah, I guess the point is to show how these things point to Jesus. So, like, because I think that's, I mean, I think he did a similar thing in the first book, right? He's looking at different films and pieces of art and showing how those things point to Christ, or finding Christ in them.
I didn't read the first book. I don't know.
I think that's the idea. I did hear him he was talking to I can't think of that guy's name. Maybe David is the one that he was talking to on his own podcast, Speakeasy Theology. And they were talking about Fire in the Cloud, the book that you're reading. And they were talking about some of the criticisms of it. And I thought some of that was interesting because it made me like curious what he actually does. Because it sounded to me like some of the things he was saying maybe sound different. Like he's maybe changed his position a little bit, the way he is thinking about scripture a little bit, or maybe I just didn't understand him rightly before. Between sanctifying interpretation or some of his like online teaching that I've found before about how to read the scriptures and versus what he's done with Fire in the Cloud. Is that do you notice anything does it seem like he's doing anything different there than what you've heard me talk about before with him?
No, actually, I've read like the last time I read the book, which was a few days ago. I actually read the section about I don't remember the guy's name. It was some guy who was killed by the Nazis, and some of the writings that he had left behind, and he had gotten into through talking about that guy some of the time and the past made right. He kind of got into some of that stuff, and it was tracked with some of the stuff that you'd been saying about it. So which I knew that you had drawn some of that from him and
Right.
Jordan Daniel. So, I mean, everything's from my perspective, but I don't know that much about him. I haven't really listened to him near as much as you have.
Right.
I mean, I like him. I think he's a wonderful speaker and a teacher. I just haven't listened to him as much as you.
Yeah. Apparently one of the critiques was something like I don't know. Now I can't remember how it was worded, and I don't want to make stuff up. Maybe I just won't say that.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's been a good book. The thing is, it's number one, it's a long book. It's like 340 some odd pages, I think. Which, I mean, some people are like, well, that's not that long, but it is when you don't have that much time to read. You know, I work a full-time job. I'm a dad and a husband, and I try to I'm pulled in a million different directions. I don't have that much time to read. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it takes me a while to get through that many pages. But then it's also one of those things where you got to be in the mood. Like for me, I've got to be in the mood to read it, or I'm wasting my time. Or I'm going to read 10 pages and not remember anything I read. So it's not like every little bit of free time I get, I can be like, oh, I got a little free time, I'm gonna read my book. Because if my mind and my heart's not into it, then I'm wasting my time. You know,
Right.
so it's taking me even longer, especially considering some of the where I'd been lately with some of this other stuff. So
yeah, I haven't had as much time to read lately either. I was reading on my breaks at work, but then I was taking much longer on my breaks than I was supposed to be. So I had to cut that out. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the class that I'm reading, that this book was assigned to me to read for, was Old Testament interpretation, right? So it's not a Christology class I'm in. So and that's mostly what he's done in this book so far, is sort of Old Testament interpretation, showing how to read. But I think it's different when we say pointing to Christ or finding Christ in the story. Like the way, depending on how you conceptualize it, it's different. Because like I said, it's not like he's going through the stories and being like, see, there's Jesus in the story.
Right, yeah.
He's showing like how to read them through a more Christ-like lens, I guess is the way I would phrase it, you know?
Right.
So, which is always generally, like I said, always in favor of the poor. Like the side that Jesus is on is the side that the poor and the oppressed is on. It's not on the side of the oppressor, you know?
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't say that he's negating or diminishing Christ in the Old Testament, would you?
No, but he's also very careful to not diminish the Old Testament and the
on its own
the
right.
the Judaism in it, or the Jewishness of it. You know what I mean? Like he tries to be very respectful of that.
Right.
So
okay, yeah, I think that was one of the critiques that they had mentioned that had come up, was almost like a diminishing of Christ.
I didn't get
through his interpretation.
I think maybe it could be a diminishment of your conception of Christ if that needs to be reframed. But
yeah,
like I said, if you're always viewing David as the Christ figure,
right,
then I guess he is diminishing that. But it's not. I think he does it the right way.
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah, I was curious. At some point, I'm going to have to read all of those.
Yeah. It's been a pretty weird thing for me, because I have such a strained relationship with the Bible altogether.
Yeah.
And depending on what mood I'm in that day.
Is this the last book for that class?
Yeah. It's the last one assigned. There was a couple more I wanted to read, but it's taken me so long that I don't know. I'm probably just gonna have to write it and move on.
Yeah, I got you.
I had a couple of books on my shelf. One of them by John Dominic Crossan. I think there was another one by Rachel Held Evans I had that was specifically about interpretation that I would like to read.
Yeah.
What you going to do?
Yeah. At some point, you ought to read Brad Jerzik's A More Christ-Like Word.
Word. Yeah, I probably should. Have I already?
I don't know. I know you read A More Christ-Like Gold. That was for one of your classes.
That's the one I read. You're right.
But he's got 3 of those: A More Christ-Like God, A More Christ-Like Way, and A More Christ-Like Word.
Word. Yeah, I read the God one. It was good. I like him.
Yeah,
He's
I like Brad.
pretty rad fella.
Brad.
Brad is rad.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, that just reminded me of something that I thought about that is kind of just random and out of place to say it right now, but it just reminded me
Say it.
of it. Because I was thinking about, like, all of us at some point have to just, I think, and maybe this is wrong, I think at some point you have to just be like, all right, this is the path that I'm on, this is the path that I'm taking. And this is and not your hill to die on necessarily, but something like that is, I think, what I mean. And so I was kind of thinking about that, and that reminded me of a quote that I heard a long time ago that stuck with me. It was, I think it was from Luke Timothy Johnson, which I haven't listened to him or read him a lot, but this was someone else quoting him. And they said that he said that he would rather be wrong with Origin than right with anyone else. And, like, that quote always stuck with me. And it is an interesting thing to think about that. It's like, especially with, like, the whole universalism thing and, like, all the stuff that, like, I am on right now. It's like there is that question, like, well, what if you're wrong? And it's like this vision that I have of it, this hope, and, like, the way that all of these pieces fit together for me right now, and the way that this vision of God and of Jesus and of us and God's plans for the entire creation, like, that is such a beautiful picture. And, like, all these voices that have helped me come to the place where I'm at, for good or bad, but, like, the more positive influences, like Chris Green and like Brad Jerzik, that's what made me think about it. I was thinking about that, how those different voices that have helped shape me into who I am today, like my theology. And, there's other ones, of course. Jordan Daniel Wood and Brian Zahn has been a huge one for me. And, like, I'd rather be wrong with those guys than be right with R.C. Sproul or
Right.
John Piper. You know what I mean?
Sometimes we're funny about stuff like that. But it just this is kind of goes along with what you were saying there, but because you were saying about how people asking, like, well, what if you're wrong about, like, well, who cares? Like, what? So what if I'm wrong? I'm still going in your perspective anyway, right? So, like,
Right.
that's what I always used to think when people would talk about the rapture, right? Like, oh, you don't believe in the rapture? Like, well, it's too bad for you. And it's like, well, that was never part of none of your criteria that you laid out for going in the rapture was to believe in the rapture. Like,
yeah,
according to your belief system, I'm still going. So. I
yeah,
mean, not now, back then, but I'm out now for sure.
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be, like, being watchful, being aware.
Which I guess is good, but technically you should always be like that, right?
Right.
That's kind of the whole point. It's that you're always aware.
Always make sure you got your Earl.
Exactly. Don't be one of the
Foolish ones.
foolish ones.
Yeah. Hey guys, wait for me.
Yeah.
What jerks of the other ones, the ones that were wise to not share their oil, huh?
Yeah. It's kind of a interesting that Jesus told that story, because he also said that if you have two coats and somebody needs one, give them one.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, hey, you got a wool or not? Don't hoard it for yourself.
Yeah. They said, go get your own Earl. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess, to kind of shift gears a little bit, because we're probably about ready to wrap it up. But,
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of at today, landed, is just kind of like what I said earlier about just being really recalibrated towards my focus on on Jesus,
Yeah.
Not in a theological way necessarily, but as the voice of authority that I would choose to listen to, because I believe in the way that he outlined. You know what I mean? About trying to follow the way. I know I'm not. I fail at it every day, I'm not there yet. But I'm not where I was, last month or the month before that. Like, I'm further
Right.
down the path than I was. And so I guess that's where I'm at, I'm not really struggling with as much theological stuff. Not that none of that stuff causes me problems. All of it causes me problems. All of it.
Right.
But it's not important to me, really. What's important to me is following the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at today. We'll see about tomorrow, but we'll let tomorrow worry about itself.
Yeah. I will say, I would rather you take that approach than to have perfect theology, which no one does,
Right.
and not follow the way of Jesus. Although I don't know that that's even possible. I mean, I guess perhaps it is. But you would think a proper theology would mean that
Right.
you inevitably live out
I don't
the
think
principles.
I don't think it's possible, but I know what you mean by that.
Yeah. And it's certainly better than having terrible theology and not living the principles of Jesus.
And I always come back to something that was kind of comforting to me during my original deconstruction a long time ago, and it was like, if these things that I like, say if I got my thoughts, my Christology is wrong, whatever. Like, if I don't believe the things I need to believe about Jesus.
Right.
But if Jesus is the person that I think he is, and that I'm told that he is, he's going to have mercy on me for that. Like, he's going to know why that my heart is in the right place, that I'm trying my best, and like, going to have mercy on me for that. Like, I don't see how you get around that. It's like, am I going to get something in theology wrong? Duh.
Yeah.
Is that he going to hold me against me? Like, I'm not perfect. Of course,
Right.
I'm going to get stuff wrong, I think that's the mark of Jesus, is the mark of compassion, though. Like, if he is who you think he is, that he's going to forgive me for having the wrong thoughts about who he is.
Right.
He's going to know why I think the way I do, I mean,
yeah, like I said earlier, to those who certainly didn't realize who he was, because if they had of, they wouldn't have killed him. It literally says that in Acts. I don't remember which one of I don't remember if it was Paul or Peter, perhaps. I don't remember who it was in the book of Acts that said that. Maybe it was Peter. But they said if you had known who it was, you wouldn't have killed him.
right.
But yeah, and Jesus said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, I mean, I feel like that about all of theology, really, like the Trinity. Yeah, we've talked about that at length on several episodes. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't believe it to be literally true, because I don't understand it. To me, it's nonsense. But if it turns out to be true, I'll know when I get there. And then I think that God will have mercy on me, because he'll understand why it didn't make sense to me, and why I was unable to accept it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, but I'm just trying to focus on Jesus, the message that he gave, the way that he taught. And I think that's a path to the better world. So,
yeah, I think so.
That's me today. So, we'll see.
Yeah. I was trying to think of something real nice to end with. I can't think of anything.
Save the neck for me, Clark.
All right, let's shut her down, I reckon.
All right.